Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's Varga here. In today's video, we're going to talk about whether you should be paying off your debt first or investing first. Now, I don't know about you, but when I first got out of school, I had a bunch of student debt. I was just starting my first full-time job, and I didn't really know what I was doing, and I was just sort of aimlessly paying off some debt, aimlessly putting some money into investments, but I didn't actually have a plan. Unfortunately, one of the things that's really lacking in our school system is that they don't really teach about personal finance and how to do these sort of things. So in today's video, I'm going to go over 5 different things that you want to keep in mind when trying to figure out whether you should be paying off your debt first or investing first. The first thing to think about is, do you have an emergency fund set up? If not, then this is something that's definitely highly recommended as a first step to getting your financial house in order. There are so many unexpected events that can happen in life that it's important to have that emergency fund set up in an easy to access account in case you need it. The size of the emergency fund is sort of up for debate. It really depends if you have multiple streams of income coming in, but in general, it's recommended to have about 2 to 4 months of your living expenses set aside in case you need it. Having this emergency fund set up is going to help you sleep at night, and also if you were to have an unexpected event pop up, it's not going to ruin all the hard work that you've put in paying off debts and putting money aside for investing. Next up is understanding the difference between good debt and bad debt. Not all debt is created equal. There is good debt and there is bad debt. Good debt is debt that you use to purchase investments that are bringing in extra cash flow and increasing your net worth. For example, if you were buying a rental property or if you were buying investments that are paying out dividends. Bad debt is debt that you use to purchase material things that aren't putting money back into your pocket. They're losing value each month. For example, boats, sea-doos, nice new sports cars, fancy clothes or purses. So when you're looking at your debts and deciding what to do, you need to know whether that debt was used for good or for bad. If I use that debt to purchase good investments that are bringing in cash flow into my pocket each month, I'm less concerned about paying that debt off quickly because I know the revenue that I'm generating is going to help me pay that debt down sooner. For example, when I worked at one of the big banks in Canada, I took out a stock loan from them to purchase stocks in that company. So the good thing with this was that the interest rate was really low because I was an employee and I was using it to buy their stocks. Plus I was making good dividends with those stocks and it was going up in value. So the dividends I was making was actually covering the cost of that debt. But if I had used that debt to buy material things that are just costing me money each month, I'm probably more inclined to want to create a plan to get that paid off as soon as possible. So now that we know the difference between good debt and bad debt, we also need to understand the importance of the interest rate that we're paying on those debts. The interest rate that we're paying is going to have a huge impact on how that debt is affecting our overall goals. Most personal loans or unsecured debt has an interest rate of between 7% and 20%. Normally when you're getting up into that double-digit percent, it usually makes sense to try to pay that off quicker because it's hard to generate consistent returns on your investments that are that high. For example, if you're carrying a large amount of debt on a credit card that you're paying 20% interest on, it probably makes sense to try to pay that off quicker because that interest rate is so high. One strategy that you can look into is what's called a balance transfer. So normally you might see a lot of these promotional offers out there where it's 6 months of 0 interest if you transfer your debt from company A to company B. Now this can be a great thing because you're getting rid of that 20% debt and transferring it over to 0% debt. But the key to this is that if you are doing one of these balance transfers, you need to make sure that you're taking advantage of that promotional time when you're getting 0% interest. If you were just to do this transfer and then not pay any extra amount onto that debt, you're pretty much just in the same place that you were before you did that transfer. So make sure when you have 0% interest on one of these offers, you're just hammering that debt down as fast as you can. Another strategy you could use if you can't find any of these promotional offers or don't qualify for one is to see if that company that you have your card with also has a lower interest credit card. Most of these companies do, so you could look at switching your credit card from the one that you have to that lower interest rate card. Normally it doesn't have as many, frills and thrills or travel points with it, but if you can get your card from 20% down to 8%, you're going to be paying a lot less in interest each month. I think one of the key things for this is that if you do switch your card from that high interest to a low interest, it's a good idea that even though your minimum monthly payment is going to drop because your interest is lower, to try to make that same payment you are making with the high interest, because that additional amount you're paying is going to go towards the principal and help you pay that credit card debt down faster. Okay, so now we have an emergency fund set up, we understand the difference between good debt and bad debt, and we've reviewed the interest rates on our debt to see where we're at. The next thing to think about is if you can get a consistently higher rate of return on your investments than you can on the interest that you owe on your debt. Your risk tolerance when it comes to investing is probably going to play a big factor into this. If you have a more conservative approach with your investing, then it's probably going to be hard to achieve enough return on your investments to cover that monthly debt payment. However, if you're comfortable with investing, you have a good risk tolerance, and you can think outside the box, then you have a lot of potential to be able to generate enough returns from your investment that you're actually going to be able to cover your monthly debt payments with your investment income. And this would be a game changer for you because instead of paying your debt out of pocket, you're actually just paying for it with the investment income that you're making. So now you can use that investment income to pay your monthly payments on your debt. And if you want to pay more money out of pocket, you're going to pay that debt down a lot quicker. So let's look at an example. Let's just say that you've been able to save up $50,000 and you also have a car loan for $50,000 at 5% interest. This means you have a monthly payment on that debt of $208.33. Now, most people might think, ooh, I should take this $50,000 I've saved up and just use it to pay off that debt because I don't want it on my records. That wouldn't be the right approach. What you could actually do instead is you could privately lend that $50,000 out to a real estate investor like myself at 12% interest, but this is going to help you bring in $500 a month of cash flow from that investment. So this is what the numbers would look like. You're bringing in $500 a month in investment income. Your monthly payment on that debt is $208.33. This leaves you with $291 of extra cash flow, plus your debt payment is being paid by the money you're making from this investment. So this is giving you an extra $290 a month or $3,500 a year that you can use to either hammer that debt down quicker, or you can use it for more investments or whatever you'd like. Now, I know a lot of people are probably saying, if I had $50,000 in my account right now, I wouldn't be watching this video. So let's try to take a look at another example that requires lower funds. So if you've been following me for a while, you know that we've set up some Airbnb rentals this year. I'll link a playlist here somewhere, so you can make sure to go watch those videos after you're watching this one to learn more about this strategy. So one of these Airbnbs that we set up this year, it cost us $19,000 to get set up. That was including furniture, first and last month's rent, and anything else we needed to get it set up and running and listed on Airbnb. Now that we've been running it for a few months, we're generating on average $2,000 to $3,000 a month cash flow with this one property. But let's just say, for example, that we're only making $1,000 a month cash flow with one of these properties that we set up. This $1,000 would allow us to easily pay that $208 a month that we have on that car loan, plus we'd have almost $800 a month left over to either pay that debt down even quicker, or we can just put into some more investments. The point here is just to get you thinking a little bit differently than most people think, to see if you can be strategic with your money and find a way to not only grow your investments, but also have your debts paid off for you. The final thing to keep in mind is that we all have a different relationship with debt and how we view it. These ideas were imprinted into our minds at a young age, and we carried that with us into adulthood. Many of us, like myself, were brought up to think that all debt is bad and evil, and we need to get rid of it as quickly as possible. But after hearing all the above points, hopefully you realize that there's not a one-size-fits-all on how we're supposed to look at debt and how we're supposed to use debt. Not all debt is bad, as we've talked about earlier. There is good debt out there that helps us grow our cash flow, grow our net worth, and that shouldn't be viewed the same way as other debts. Also, there's debts that have a lot lower interest rate, and they shouldn't be viewed the same as debts that have a much higher interest rate. With all that being said, even when we know all these points and the logic is there for us to see, sometimes no matter what, we just can't get rid of that feeling that we hate debt, we don't want debt, it gives us stress, it gives us anxiety, like we just have that in the back of our mind at all times. And if that's the case, I would probably say it's a better idea for you to focus on paying down your debt, because if it's causing you stress and anxiety and it's not good for your health, then it's better to clean that up regardless of what the financials or the logic says. So there you have it. 5 things to consider when you're trying to decide whether you should be paying off your debt first or investing your money first. There are a lot of factors to consider, a lot of personal feelings, comfort levels that come into play when deciding what's right for you. However, all things being equal, if you can get a higher return on your investments than your debt, it's normally a better idea to invest that money, make that higher return, and use those funds to pay that debt down. I hope you liked today's video. Make sure you give it a big thumbs up, subscribe if you aren't already subscribed, and leave a comment down below letting me know how you feel about debt or investing or any other questions you might have. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys next week.